Hi, welcome to the Dirt Trail Running Podcast. My name is Michele Hartwig, and I am the owner of Ornery Mule Racing and race director for all of our races. And I'm here today with Coach Kaleb. So you want to
Hey,
say why don't you introduce yourself and tell a little bit about what you do at Ornery Mule Racing?
yeah. So Kaleb Stephens, I've been fortunate enough to work with Ornery Mule now. I think it's been close to a year and a half. Just between running social media and coaching, it's been an absolute blast. And really, Ornery Mule was kind of what pulled me into the sport. I mean, it was one of my first races was Earth Day, and then my first 100 miler was Hennepin. So it was one of those where I really started to fall in love with the community through Order Mule and everything that, you've built, Michelle, and the community of how everybody's just cares for one another. And it's such like every race is very distinct that it's Order Mule. And so that kind of is what got me started. And then just continuing to get more and more into the community as I've been able to be more involved with OMR through the different, through coaching and then through the social media stuff. So it's become such a massive part of my life, and I'm thankful and grateful for that.
Yeah, and you and I have ended up doing quite a few of the same races lately
Yeah,
because since you started at Ornery Mule, you've now moved out to Arizona for
yeah,
a job out there. And my daughter lives in Arizona, and my dad and my brother, I got two brothers actually that live in Arizona. And so I visit pretty often, enough where
mm.
everybody's asking me if I live there now.
Yeah, yeah. It's the second home for you.
It is. I got to be really nice to my daughter because I like staying in her spare room.
Yeah,
It's a good way to get away in the winter.
yeah,
But yeah, so we were just out and did Black Canyon. You did the 100k and I did the 60k. And it wasn't a month ago. I just looked. It feels like it was forever ago.
no, yeah. That time has flown by since. It's incredible. I think it'll be a month ago next weekend. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's been pretty crazy. And it's amazing how quickly the weather has turned here as well, right? Coming off of that, where it was just like a snowstorm hit right before it. And now it feels almost like a Midwest summer out here, it's crazy how quickly it turned.
Yeah, when I was out there, I pretty much I was there for, I don't know, probably at least 4 weeks. It might have been 5 weeks. I took two trips because I had to come back for work once. And I was in Arizona, but all my pictures are me in long sleeves and long pants
Yeah.
and all bundled
Yeah.
up. Like, because you guys had a great winter
Yeah. It
weather-wise.
was it was amazing. And now it's still a little cooler in the mornings. Like it's still nice, and a little chilly in the mornings and in the evenings, but during the day, it's getting up into the high 70s, low 80s, which is a little bit terrifying because I know that the summer, oven type temperatures are just around the corner. So just trying to like enjoy what's left of this like really nice period of time, and then it becomes like a winter back home, right in the Midwest. Having been there where it's those 3 months of winter is what you dread. Here it's the summers. So yeah, trying to just soak it all in for now.
Yeah. Yeah, we had great weather. Well, we had interesting weather actually. You and I, so the Black Canyon 100K was on Saturday, and the Black Canyon 60K that I ran was on Sunday, and we both had two completely different experiences as far as trail conditions go. And you got the work. I would say mine were way more ideal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so you want I well, maybe we should not start there. You guys got to keep on listening because it's very interesting what happened. But maybe we'll just kind of talk about packet pickup a little bit and how so anybody listening, maybe it'll help them as they prepare for Black Canyon. But that was a super cool place. What was the name of that place that we went to?
Yeah, I don't remember, but to
Oh,
describe it, I mean, it was like almost like a courtyard of kind of buildings around it. And we came up and it was in Black Canyon City, right? I think is where it was. And they had the stage type deal set up, with kind of the elite panel going on, where you could sit and listen to the men and women as they prepared for the race and kind of were doing a Q&A session, which was really cool. And then they had like some of the thickest burgers you'll ever see in your life on the grill, in one area. And then obviously all the merch and stuff, but it was a really cool kind of hangout, and a really good vibe. Like it really kind of got you into race mode, but it also for me helped to kind of take away some of the pressure of what I was feeling leading up to that race because it was so chill. Like it felt like a really big event and you knew that it was something special, but at the same time, like it had those trail vibes versus like a road marathon, where it's like really like uptight and like really stressful, intense. Like it was very like relaxed and fun. That was a lot of fun being able to spend some time together there too.
Yeah, I agree. And it gave you an idea of what the course was going to look like because it was one
Yeah,
group of buildings and then all around it was all the beautiful trails and, land that we were going to be running on the next day. And it
yeah.
was easy to get to. So, I mean, if you're flying into Arizona, like I literally drove out of my daughter's house that lives right in Phoenix, got onto one highway, drove straight
Mhm.
there, got off, and it's like literally right off of that highway. So it was super easy.
Yeah, it's about like an hour north of Phoenix, and you just take 17 up there, the same way that you would go if you were like heading up to Sedona or Flagstaff. And yeah, it's super easy. And the nice thing about that race, is that you can stay in Phoenix, right? You have to kind of get up a little early to get to the race, but you can totally stay in Phoenix, make the drive that morning, whether you're running the 60K or the 100K, and then get home that same night. So you don't have to look for somewhere that's remote or that's going to be difficult, especially if you have like an early morning flight out on Sunday or something. Like if you run the 100K, it's really easy to pull off, which is nice. But the cool thing is like that trail is it feels remote, but it's close to Phoenix, which is really cool.
Yeah, I'll talk about my race experience, but once I was on the trail, I felt like I was in the middle of the mountains. Like there was
Yeah.
no towns anywhere near me and it wasn't until almost the end of the race that you started to see the towns and you're like, okay, now if I get lost, at least I can see there's a town and I'll
Yeah.
just start going that direction.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, all you said was really good on that. And then, so when we went to bed, did we realize it was gonna snow overnight? That's got to be pretty uncommon in Arizona. I mean, you haven't been there that long, but
Yeah.
what is it?
I think I remember seeing that it was going to be colder and some flurries. I do remember seeing that. And that was when that big system was coming through and I like to ski and stuff. So like when I always check that. So I knew Flagstaff was going to get snow, but I didn't realize that we were going to get the snow on the race course, or as much as we got, which I say that and like, if you're from the Midwest or anywhere like that, it wasn't anything crazy, but it was a lot more than I would have expected in Arizona, especially at that elevation.
Yeah, and so you got dropped off at the start, so you were able to
Yeah,
drive. You didn't have to do the bus ride, and
right.
they ended up delaying the race because it sounds like the buses were coming from Phoenix, and with an inch or two of snow, Phoenix
Yeah.
doesn't have plows,
Well,
and
I
so
think some of them were coming from Prescott too. So I think they
okay.
were coming like, yeah, so I think they were coming like it would be west to east. And Prescott got that same amount of snow. So I think some of the traffic patterns there maybe were, it was just more snow than they're used to. And the bus drivers, from what I saw afterwards, were just concerned about like the safety and they wanted to delay it. And then, yeah, it was like 2 or 2.5 hours that it ended up getting delayed because of that, which was unique on race morning to kind of be faced with that.
Yeah, I can't imagine because all of your plans, like I plan, what time I'm going to eat, you need to
Yeah.
go to the bathroom and have your coffee. And then as
Mhm.
the race goes on, it might get dark now on you while you're running. Like, what kind of challenges did that have for you?
Yeah, that was it was different for sure. I mean, I would typically like to be up for a little bit before I go and run. Like even like my weekend long runs and stuff, I like to have that time in the morning. So it didn't bother me ton. On my way up, I was riding up with my parents. They were in town for the race and got the message that it was delayed. So, we were probably 20 minutes from Meyer High School, which is where the start line is, and turned around and went to a Starbucks and just kind of hung out at a Starbucks, which really kind of became a gathering point for a lot of runners. There were a lot of folks walking in. I saw Billy Yang came in and he was hanging out in there for a little bit, which is kind of cool to see him in there. And so we hung out and then went and just got some more Gatorade and stuff like that. I mean, I was kind of primed, to kick off the race that I think it was supposed to start at 7, I believe is when it was. So I had like my electrolytes and my coffee and hydration and food and everything. And then realized that like, hey, with this delay, like I kind of need to eat a little bit more. I need to top everything off again. And so had like a croissant and some additional electrolytes and stuff like that. And so that wasn't horrible. The bad part was like once we got there, originally it was a 2 hour delay. And so that 2 hour delay, like, okay, I can handle this, whatever, right? We get to the start line and everybody actually got into the corral, or a lot of people did. Like we thought we were getting ready to race. And then it was like 3 minutes before we were supposed to go, they said it was delayed another 30 minutes. And then that was a little bit tricky because you know, the car was parked like, I don't know, maybe half a mile, three-quarters of a mile away. And so then you have this like awkward, like 30-minute gap now that you need to fill. It was pretty cold. So it's like a mad dash for everybody to try to find their support who has maybe their jacket or a blanket or something you can throw on. And then it's like, do I have enough time to sit in a warm car or do I just want to kind of kill time out here? And so that was the more difficult part, I would say, was just like that in between of like, how long is this going to go on for? Because then you start to think like, is this going to happen again? Do I need to eat more? What do I need to do? But fortunately, it was just that 2.5 hour mark, and I think that extra 30 minutes was just driven by the buses because like 10 minutes before the race started, like I think I saw 6 or 8 buses that all kind of rolled in all at once with runners on it. So I think they were just waiting to be able to get everybody to that start line. But I think afterwards somebody asked me like what that was like, and it's one of those things where you can nitpick it and be like, hey, this was unfortunate and that was stressful or whatever. But like at the end of the day, you've trained for months to go and run 62 miles. And so like if you can't handle like a 2 or 2.5 hour delay, like you're probably not like mentally strong enough to go and run a good race. So you ought to be able to handle that. Like if that's the worst thing that happens to you, like that's not a bad thing to have happen.
I think that it also changed the course quite a bit for you because normally where you were starting at, I know for me, I started it and it was 20 degrees, and we started on
Mhm.
time at the same time from the same place that you would, and the ground was frozen solid. It sounds like that wasn't the case for you guys.
Yeah, it was muddy and I didn't realize. So it starts on a track, as you know, and that track is a dirt track. It's not like asphalt. So it was a muddy mess when we started. And you know, when it was weird because it transitioned. So like those first probably like 7 or 8 miles were all mud. As we got onto the trails, once you kind of go through a community after you get off the initial track phase of the race, you loop around the track and then you run through on some roads and then you kind of dive off the roads and you're on trails. And those trails were had a lot of snow, but as we started running them and the sun had come up, because at that point it's 9:45, almost 10 o'clock in the morning, and that snow had started to melt, and the trails became a mud fest. And it reminded me a lot of running back in the Midwest, having spent 30 plus years in the Midwest running and being out in those types of conditions. It The difference though was there's rocks in Arizona that are pretty big that are buried in that mud. And so if you're back in the Midwest, yeah, there might be some rocks. It might be a little bit, chunky, but for the most part, it's going to be like a softer mud. And here, with the way that the trails are, if you kind of step down into some mud and you hit a rock, like that could be a pretty big rock, right? You could get kind of hurt on that. So you really had to be careful about your footing, but also like where you were stepping because you didn't know what you were going to step into. So that was interesting. And that lasted for probably, like I said, the first 7 or 8 miles. And then we kind of came through that and started getting on some better, drier trails. And that was interesting too, because you went from like this winter wonderland, which was just really pretty. But then you started getting into that more standard Arizona type trail. But because we had gotten so much rain and snow throughout that week, a lot of the river crossings and things like that were quite full too, right? So you had a ton of runoff as well, which just made for a really interesting day, and it threw a lot at you as a runner.
Yeah, the part that you're describing where after you go through town, then you hop off onto the trail, it was really interesting for all of us doing the 60K because we could literally see your frozen footprints from the
Yeah,
day before and imagine what everybody had went through. And we were like,
yeah,
and it was, I mean, it kind of made it more technical than it probably normally
mhm,
is because it was
yeah,
like all these deep, like just wide thing of deep footprints. And
yeah,
but those rocks, that was different for me in trails. Like just I don't know. There's just something right. The Arizona trails are rugged. I mean, there's just
yeah,
something about it that can take me down more than on the Midwest or on the Midwest trails. But it's also just practicing and getting used to it and
mhm,
understanding how to
yeah,
run it. You actually told me something when you were talking about the race, like within your training, how you got ready for that. Cause I remember thinking, man, these rocks, they just, for about 20 miles, I was fine. I was
yeah,
picking my feet up, but then I realized I was starting to feel tired. And once I
yeah,
started feeling tired, my muscle memory wasn't working for me because I hadn't practiced enough on that. And I hit my toe I would think I'm picking my feet up, but my toe was catching every single rock and trying to knock me on the ground. And you had a different experience because you trained on that.
yeah. Yeah, I put a lot into that. And as I'm preparing for quite a few races out here this year, like that's been you try to train your gut, right? You try to train your legs for endurance. You try to train like your mind to be able to overcome like the pain cave or to at least deal with it. But since moving out here, it's been a lot for me about trying to train my body of just how to pick up my feet too, right? Because like, yeah, I can do it if I'm doing a 10 or a 15-mile trail run, but when I'm out and I have really tired legs and I feel like I'm doing it, um, I'm quickly falling, right? Or I'm tripping all the time. And so I've focused a lot of my training over probably the last, really since Javelina, on how do I tackle these trails with really tired legs? So I will go out and I will really try to wear my legs down, and then I'll go run some technical trails. And I do that just to try to simulate as much of what it feels like in the later stages of a race when you're going over those obstacles that will take you out, right? And it's not a lot of times in Arizona, it's not one of those things where like, yes, you trip and fall and you pick yourself back up. Like if you fall here, there's a 50-50 chance that like you're going to get knocked out of a race. I mean, depending on what that terrain looks like. If you're in some of these like really technical areas with jagged rocks everywhere, and you have firsthand experience in this, Michelle, like you gritted your teeth through it at Crown King last year, but you had one of those falls, right? And it's just like you have to be mindful of it. You have to train your ankles and your core and everything to be stable and to be able to be a little bit more nimble. And one of the other things too, and the ways that I trained on that is not just on like the tired legs and understanding how to run it, but I've spent a lot of time like hiking and going slower too, in more of like my recovery and some of those like build days where I'll do a hike and a run. And what I do when I try to do those hikes is just like learn how to plot my line. So it's as much about like as I'm walking, like understanding how I would tackle that trail as I'm running down it, if I were running down it, at a slower pace. And it's kind of like riding a bicycle, right? Like you kind of start really slow, and then as you get more comfortable, you can speed up and you can pedal faster and you can really push it. But you have to understand like at a slower speed where everything there's no risk, like how should I navigate this? How do I step here and where do I step? And so I tried to build that a lot of that into, and I definitely felt a lot of the benefits of that on race day for sure. Yep.
Yeah. What did you think of the course? Like from the description of it beforehand to showing up and actually seeing it, was it what you expected?
I don't think it was what I expected. I thought it was going to be uh, a little smoother. I thought it would be because you hear about it being a really fast course. Um, and so I thought it was going to, and it's runnable, it's very runnable, but I thought it was going to be maybe even more runnable. I thought it would be more like more compact dirt with like kind of chunky, but more compact dirt. But there's definitely a lot of sections there that you're like running on lots of rocks, you know. And then in the back half of the race, like the second 50K, um, there is more climbing, like a big climb and a lot of switchbacks, or at least it felt that way at the time, that I wasn't necessarily expecting. Like I just for some reason in my head, and I had looked at the elevation chart a lot. I had looked at it a lot, but during the race, I just thought, man, this seems different than what I had studied, and I hadn't spent any time on that course. So, part of that could be though, like running in mud for the first like 8 miles, my legs were pretty tired and maybe it just felt harder than what it actually was. But yeah, it wasn't what I expected, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was more gorgeous than I
Mhm.
anticipated it being, actually.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I literally started crying when I was
Wow.
like looking around, just going, I just couldn't believe I was there and that I was healthy enough to be there. I was just so grateful. And but it was so hard for me. Like the rocks were just I'll tell you, if the first 20 miles were not that hard. I think I bonked a little bit coming into Bumblebee aid station. I might When I got to the aid station, I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm tired. I don't know if I'm going to be able to stay in front of cutoff. And they're like, well, what have you ate? And I'm like, well, I had a banana. And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, you're at mile 20 and you've had a banana. I'm like, oh yeah, I suppose I haven't quite ate enough. That
Yeah.
might be it. So they like filled me with all kinds of food, man. Like, and they were like fantastic at that aid station. That was a really fun one. Pam Reed came over to help me. Craig Thornley,
Wow.
Chris Thornley, like just everybody. They're like, "What do you need? Oh, you need this, Michelle. We got this." And they were just like taking great care of me. Nikki and Sid said that they were watching back at home, and they're like, "Michelle needs to get out of that aid station. She's been there for like 25 minutes." I'm like, well, all the
Uh,
cool people were there. It was fun to hang out.
yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a gorgeous, gorgeous course, and
Mhm.
different than I expected as far as how pretty it was. Is it the Bradshaw Mountains that we're running towards that were covered in snow? Is that what they're called?
I
Or
think so. Yeah, I'm still learning here, but I've heard the name of those mountains before, and I think those are the ones. Yeah.
we don't want to pass false information, but I feel like
Yeah.
somebody told me that it was the Bradshaw Mountains that we'd be looking at,
Okay.
and that they were all covered in snow. Um, yeah, that was really pretty. But you really crushed it. Like, so I was so surprised to see you post a reel that you actually had your race bib on, and you look like you were casually running and just enjoying, just the way I was, because I was
Yeah.
casually running and enjoying and talking to the people around. But you did it and were like a top 70 finisher in the race, which was insane. And I mean, that was like one of the most highly competitive races in the world. I mean, really, really good.
Yeah, yeah, it makes me a little emotional thinking about it. I think I just started running ultras about 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and I'm learning a lot. And I've had so many conversations about this. Just kind of what my training looks like and I really put a lot into it, and I try to like really simulate what race days are going to be like as much as I can, so that when I get into it, it feels comfortable, right? And it might be the pain that feels comfortable. It might be the trail or the track that feels comfortable. Like whatever it is, I just try to simulate as much as I can so things don't surprise me on race day. And it's gone pretty well. And I just like I hope to continue to grow in that way. But I had so much fun out there, and it was, I've spent so much time working on climbing, and get trying to get big vert and building my legs because when I ran Hennepin, and that was the hardest race in my life up to that point that I had done, and I really struggled in the last 30 miles, and I did that. That was 2022. Um, and I learned a lot that day, and I learned a lot about what my training needs to look like so that I don't ever let that happen again. And at some point it will, but it's one of those where if I can like build myself up and I can prepare not for the in this case the first 50k but the second. So how do you get your body to a point in training where everything you're thinking about is that last 50k, so that even when you are really hurting, like you can smile through it because it's such a comfortable feeling. And so, yeah, I think I was able to really push at the end in a way that I don't think I've been able to do in a race. And I was able to kind of keep my foot on the gas as much as I could for me personally, through the finish of that thing. And that was a really special feeling, and it was really special. My parents were out there and they hadn't been able to go to a race in a year. And so that was, the first one they'd been at since Hennepin, and to know that they were there, and to be able to like celebrate that with them and have them be at the finish line was really something special for me too.
Yeah, and then you got to go up on state on the live
Yeah.
broadcast too afterwards. That
Yeah.
was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was watching and they were talking because it sounds like their friends that run the Aravaipa
Hmm.
group runs were finishing.
Yeah.
And I'm like in the comments going, Kaleb just finished. I just saw Kaleb because I saw your hair
Yeah.
in there because
Yeah.
it was a little dark out. And then they were like, "Oh, Michelle's saying Kaleb finished. Let's get them all up there." So
Yeah.
was that were you? I can't imagine going up on the live broadcast afterwards. Like I'm tired
Yeah.
when I get done.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like really special too because like that race is sponsored by Hoka, and like I sat down, like it was so weird to be asked, and then you like sit down on this couch in this like studio setting and you pick up like a Hoka microphone, and it's like one of those like what is happening right now? Like is this real? Like this does not seem like I'm supposed to be here right now. But that was, yeah, that was so much fun. That was really
Yeah,
cool.
I'm like, I know him. And then you switched, you even had the mind, didn't you switch to like an Ornery Mule shirt or something?
Yeah, I had to grab my Order Mule jacket. Yeah, our Morel jackets. And I was like, hey, I need that. My folks had it. I'm like, I need to put that on. And I name dropped you in there too. I was trying to get some like OMR stuff into that. I didn't know how much time I had or what that conversation was going to look like, but it's such like a blessing to be able to like have that opportunity to promote it, right? Because Order Meal means so much to me, and there's a lot of folks that are watching that could be more like West Coast based that haven't ran races that are East, right? And don't know like things that are outside of just this region. And so like any opportunity to be able to do something like that, I want to take full advantage of. Who knows if I'll ever have that chance again? So it was like I got to get the gear on, I got to be able to say stuff like,
Yeah, that
yeah.
is true. So, like anybody that might be listening, I do think, so everybody's been asking me, they're like, Michelle, you always look so happy out in Arizona. Are you moving out there? And sure, I love being out there and visit. I have family there and I love seeing
Yeah.
everybody. It's nice to get away from the winter weather here. But I mean, my heart is so much in the Midwest. Like,
Mhm.
um, I I honestly like our trails better. It's gorgeous
Yeah.
there, without a doubt, but that's like I love to be in the trees. I
Yeah.
I mean I actually love to be in the meadows too. I love open trails. I love black dirt and green. And you guys, and I also love going to Arizona and seeing that. So I love all the different, races in different parts of the world and seeing different terrains. So yeah, we
Mhm.
would love to have some people come out, and I think they're going to. I mean, I feel like
Yeah.
we're more and more people are recognizing the Midwest. When I first started putting on races, or even first started running races, when there wasn't even that many races in the Midwest, I remember my first thought was, man, like Ultra Running Magazine, that's not about Midwest running, and we've got really cool trails. It's all about West Coast. It's mainly West Coast. And so I
Yeah.
always feel kind of guilty when I go there and do it but I'm putting on races during the racing season here. So it's
Right.
like I have to go to Arizona because that's my down season.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the cool things like for like about you is that you go and you do run other people's races and you're a part of the community, right? It's not just like a that I'm just going to stay in my box. Like you're in the community and you're looking at things that others do really well or areas where you're like, hey, maybe I would change this, and you bring all of that back to OMR events, which is what makes them so special too. Because it's you evolve the races and you like meet the runners where they are and you provide like an environment that's going to be unique, right? And it's not just like a cookie cutter approach, which is really cool.
Yeah, I hope so. It was one of a really fun thing for me during my race for the 60K is, I mean, I didn't feel like I was like as well trained up as you were. I struggled. It was winter time here,
Yeah.
and I really don't like running in the winter. And that's no excuse, but it just means that my training wasn't quite what it was. The year before, I trained through the winter really well because we happened to
Yeah.
have a nice winter where the trails weren't completely ice, and I was able to run on them. This past winter, they were in horrible shape most of the time. So I was running roads and stuff like that. So the technical stuff I hadn't really done, where last year I did all my long runs on the trails. And I just felt like, but I wasn't horrible. I mean, I was a very consistent runner. I got miles in, but it just wasn't as ideal as maybe I thought it would be. But but that also took a little pressure off because I was so excited for the actual adventure of seeing the trail. I mean, I was so excited. Like, what does this look like? Like, I have no
Yeah.
idea what it's like to run through the Black Canyon
Yeah.
at in Arizona. And so I'm like, that takes pressure off of me thinking, okay, I got to try to get in under this time. I didn't care. I just wanted to get in under cutoff. And so, like, I was just listening to the conversations around me. And as like, I would like one conversation, I'd kind of speed up and kind of talk to those people for a while. Then I'd hear somebody else and maybe stop and like run with them. And I just got to meet a bunch of people on the course. And I was running along, and I don't know, something came up about Kettle Moraine 100 and that I was race director. And I started talking about that. And the girl behind me goes, oh, I did Kettle Moraine 100. She goes, I got the hat on right now. And actually, it's the hat I got on today. And she goes, that's
Wow.
my favorite hat. And I turn around, I go, that's the same hat I have on. It's my favorite hat too. And
Wow.
so we ended up running the race almost the pretty much the whole time. We were like back and forth between each other. She was way better on the uphills and the more technical stuff than me. I didn't actually, because I wasn't running so hard, like I didn't really notice uphills that much.
Yeah.
It felt like I could totally see why it's a very runnable course. Like just you
Hmm.
could completely get into a groove running it if you're good on that kind of terrain.
Yep.
Um, but because of the pace I was going, I didn't necessarily, there was no part that I was like, oh my gosh, that climb. I didn't
Yep.
really notice that. Um, well, maybe, I don't know. It felt kind of, I didn't really like that little out and back that we had at the end. It felt different than the rest of the course.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, we were at the end. I don't think I was overly tired, but you know how you're just kind of ready to be done. You're out, you could smell the
Yeah.
finish line. You had to do like a little out and back. I don't remember how far it was, maybe like a 4 mile. And then it was only 2 miles to the finish line. and it
Yeah.
was just kind of roady and kind of weird in there. Um, but after the rest of the course was so gorgeous, but it wasn't an actual road. I don't want to miss. It was a like a forest sort of road thing,
Mm,
and but yeah, it was I really enjoyed it. At the end, I liked it was super runnable, like maybe like the last 2 miles, which was really
yeah.
fun. And is what I don't know if it was like that for you because I don't quite know how the course compared. And it
Yeah.
was nice to know that. I mean, I was like, for me, I in my mind, I was like booking it. I'm like, dropped
Yeah.
my pace. I put my music on loud. I'm like, hey, I can still run, and
Yeah.
that felt really good to be able to do. What was the end of the course like for you? Because I don't know what the difference was because we finished at the
Yeah.
same spot.
No, I don't. It doesn't finish at the same spot.
Oh, it doesn't.
Um,
Okay.
mm, yeah, so it finishes uh in a different area. The end was like, yeah, so it was weird because like it my last like my or hour and a half, I think, or so, maybe more, was in the dark. So I couldn't see a lot. Like all you can see, right, is just that trail. But I remember it was a little chunky, kind of rocky. There were some climbs in there. And then really like the last 2 miles was more runnable, but it was still like chunky. So kind of rocky. Uh, yeah, and I was doing as much as I could to really push towards the end because I had there was kind of a group of us that were all kind of jockeying back and forth. And so I really, just was trying to hold on with this group as we were kind of all moving back and forth. So I don't know what my pace looked like at the end, but I was, I was pushing as hard as I could. And it was runnable at the end for sure.
Yeah, you actually sped up, like, because I was watching it live as it was happening. I mean, as long as all the live results were exactly right, I'm not
Yeah.
totally sure how that is, but it like you had one section where you slowed down a little bit, so I figured there was probably a big climb in there. And
Mhm.
then I'm like, oh my gosh, there's only like 4 miles left, like, and
Yeah.
I kind of knew that was I had read it and I thought it was going to be more runnable, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I was just like watching, and you just came in. Part of me was thinking this is going to take forever because sometimes I know how the last 4 miles could
Yeah.
be, they can either be fast or forever, but it was like in no time. You're like a 5K time that you were done.
Yeah, I skipped that. There's a last aid station there, and I made my mind up like you're not stopping. Like you don't need water. Like no matter what your mind is telling you, just push through it. So I was able to pass a couple of people there. And those aid stations, like there's usually an aid station on a race in like the last 3 miles, right? Like it's kind of like that celebratory whatever. And a lot of times people one like just want they're like, oh, I'm almost done, I'm gonna stop here, I'm gonna have a drink, and then a lot of times that drink turns into like 10 minutes that you just wasted because your body doesn't need the drink, like you're almost there. And then a lot of times you can like overindulge at that last aid station because your mind mentally just kind of starts to be like, hey, I'm pretty much done here, let me eat and drink and whatever. And then I mean, I've seen people get sick after that last aid station. You have like 2 miles left and somebody's like getting sick because they ate too much too quickly or drank too much, because it's like you kind of let off the gas a little bit. So that was one of the things I did where I like when I got to the second to the last one, and it was kind of one of those, hey, this is your last one, that's it, and go. And so that helped me too to not let off the gas because I think once you do that, it's hard to hammer it back down for the last 30 minutes or whatever that ends up being. So, yeah, that was a lot of fun. I did get past though at the end and I was very frustrated. So, as I think about the evolution of me as an ultra runner, I'd be lying if I didn't say that that's been in my mind on several of my training runs recently, and I do not want that to happen again. So when I need that extra motivation, I just picture that headlight running past me with like a minute left in the race, and
Oh
that's
my
uh that's
gosh.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't see that. That was not on the live feed.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
uh
now, are you going to do you think you'll do Black Canyon next year?
I don't know. I'm a little intrigued by what's the weekend after? It's the one that's in Nevada that they do that's like a 2.5 mile loop. Um it's the flat course, and you can do like the 100 mile. Oh man, I can't remember the name of that. Mm, yeah, I can't remember the name of it, but it's one of those. It's like the flat course. It's more of a track
Oh,
style.
yeah, the jackpot.
Jackpot, yeah.
Yeah.
So like a race like that to me would be super interesting just to see what I could do, not on like a technical trail, but what could I run 100 miles in would be really interesting. So I don't know if I'll do something like that or if I would do Black Canyon again. I did enjoy Black Canyon, but I do like to mix races up for sure. Um, and I'm running javelina again. So this year, which I ran last year. So I don't want to get into a situation where I'm running like the same races every single year. And I really enjoyed javelina out here. And for me, it's like with my job, it's tough to travel out of Arizona and like take multi-day like trips at the moment. So I'm having to do a lot of the local stuff, which is fine, but I just want to make sure that I'm trying to get some variety in that since I am limited in where I can go and what I can do for extended periods of time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
luckily they have a lot of races there. I kind of
Yeah.
do. I love doing the same races over and over again.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
I always have, and but I don't know. I mean, I'm not totally sure on Black Canyon. It would be
Mhm.
nice if I did it over again. I think I would come into it training wise different. I mean, I've
Yeah.
got family that live there. I should
Hmm.
have just went out there. We don't have any races in December, in November, December. We do have one in January.
Yeah.
Um, so like it would be interesting for me to do Black Canyon again and go out there. My daughter's house is really nice because it's a 6 mile run to South Mountain Trailhead to the
Yeah.
trailhead I like to use, and then I
Yeah.
could run there, get some. I run the canal to get there,
Hmm.
and then get some more technical training in where my
Yeah.
legs are starting to get a little bit more tired, and then run back to her house. So I could get some really. I feel like if would have just done that this year, I might have felt a little bit better on the race, even though I
Yeah.
highly enjoyed it. It was really great. And then you've got Crown King coming up. That's what I did last year.
Yeah. I have Crown King in 3 weeks, and then this weekend I have Mesquite Canyon 50 miler. So just my schedule. So with Cocodona, I'm running Cocodona in May. So I'm just trying to do races as like my longer training runs. So I have a 50 miler, then I have Crown King, and then I have another one, Whiskey Basin 91k in April. So it's just kind of, and then I'll be back for Earth Day, the weekend after Whiskey Basin. So it's going to be a big kind of next really 2 months of just events and just trying to get my body ready for all of that and running on all different types of trails and different elevation gains and stuff like that, to try to prepare as much as I can.
Yeah, that seems like so much. Like, what does and also I know you have a big job. You did a podcast with Loretta, right? With Coach Loretta
Yeah.
on managing, like your work schedule and all that training schedule. How are can you like what kind of mileage are you doing? How are you breaking that up to get ready for Cocodona 250?
Yeah. So last week, for example, I did about 13 and a half hours of running. That was 70 miles because I built in 11,500 feet of climbing in that. And then I did 3.5 hours of cross training. So last week was about a 17-hour week, preparing for Cocodona. This week will be, probably in that same ballpark with a race coming up this weekend. And so, for me, between that and coaching, and social media stuff and all of it, it's kind of just like, I think about it in the same way that I think about just straight training for a race, right? It's like these are things that I have to do. So, and I have a job as well that I have to have, right? So it's like how do I balance all of this? And there's days where it's easier than others. It's a lot of like early mornings. I do a lot of lunch runs. I'm fortunate here at work that there's a culture here that allows for folks to go to the gym at lunch. We've incorporated a lot. Like it's really cool. Where I work, there's a lot of folks that are very interested in in my passion. And so they have questions about running and hiking and all of these things. And it's turned into over the last few months, like them getting involved in this with me. And so I feel like I come to work and I have this work family that's also like a training family for me too. And so there's folks that have never hiked or anything, and now we're doing weekly hikes together. We're going to the gym and doing strength and mobility training together. And we're doing these things and we find time throughout the day, which helps me, right? Because then it helps hold me accountable. It helps me to carve out some time during the day, a couple days a week, where I've got this group here at work that um, just is excited about this journey for themselves as I am for myself, but we're equally as excited for each other. And that's made it a lot easier as well. So it's just kind of, I fit my training in where I can, but that's like my number one priority outside of my job.
And so you're a coach, obviously. Do you
Mhm.
write did you hire a coach, or are you self-coaching?
I'm self-coaching, and I think if I run Cocodona again, I will probably hire a coach. This year, I'm really, I think for me to be the best coach that I can be, like I like to learn. I like to kind of learn by failure, and I like to learn and understand like things that work really well for me and things that don't. And then I like to be able to bring that to my athletes. And so for me, like I have created this plan that I'm on, and I tweak it every single week. And with my schedule, I think it allows me to have the utmost flexibility to be able to change, given kind of the workload that I've got right now, what I'm going to do and when I'm going to do it, and how I'm going to balance climbing versus more road running and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm learning a ton. I would like to take those lessons, and then if I do, whether it's Cocodona or another 200 miler, then get a coach once I have this baseline of, hey, here's what's kind of worked for me and what hasn't, and then be able to supplement and add on top of that with somebody who's a real expert in it. Because I think part of it for me this year was just like I was a little nervous about what this workload would look like, and working with a coach on that, not knowing how much time I would truly have seemed like it would be very stressful of trying to balance, what they would ask me to do versus my responsibilities outside of training. So that was a big part of my decision to do it solo.
Yeah, I feel you on that. I've been building up my running over the last couple years, and I self-coach. I am a certified running coach, but I do think it's hard to coach yourself because there's
Mhm.
things that I think that we probably tend to overdo it is the biggest way, or expect too much out of ourselves that maybe if we were coaching somebody we wouldn't. But that's just me. And but I do, I agree. You have to learn, what you need to ask for from your coach. So, like, since I feel kind of new back at it, I wouldn't even have known what to ask, where I'm going to be struggling at. And I got myself to the basic. And you've done really well. Do you feel um, strong and healthy and injury
I
free?
do. I
Yeah.
do.
So that
Yeah.
means you're making good choices.
Mhm. Yeah, I've done a lot. I've changed a lot. And Cocodona's, running a 200 miler is feels like a different sport. But it's forcing me to really lean in on the areas that I'm not good at. And I'm trying to address like those areas where I just feel weak. So strength and mobility and getting into the gym and doing stuff that's not just running, and just running specific. So trying to do a lot more of the cross training and building strength. So I do a lot of rucking as well, which has really been great for me too. Um, and so I do, I feel like, I'm trying to use this period of time to really kind of, I like to call it like build the monster. And then once that race is over, be able to transition that more back into like my baseline races that I'll do, which would be more of like that 50 mile to 100 mile. Um, and having developed in a lot of new ways that I wouldn't have. if I would have just continued to run that same distance, because this has just opened my eyes to so much.
It'll be interesting to see if 100 becomes your typical race or if
Yeah.
you start looking for more 250-mile
Yeah.
races. I can't even imagine. I think that the 250 has to give you a healthy amount of being scared that is very motivating for training.
Yeah. Yeah. I told somebody the other day, you get to a point in training where you're tired always, right? Um, but and it's really easy depending on the length of distance that you're going to be running to say, well, today should be a rest day then. And the tricky thing about a 200 plus miler, at least in training, and I'm speaking of this as somebody who's only trained for one but never actually ran one, right? So when you're training for it, you get into this mind space of like, yeah, you are tired. Do you not think you're going to be tired on day three?
Mhm.
Like, so you should go train, you know? And so it's walking that fine line of like, how do you adequately prepare yourself while avoiding injury, listening to your body, getting rest so you can still continue to grow and build, but also like you have to like walk that fine line the other way too, where you're getting used to performing when you're really tired and worn down because you're going to have to. There's no way around that. So, like, how do you do that? And that's been a fun little thing to try to figure out.
Yeah, I mean, I personally think you're gonna do really well. I mean, it's been interesting to see. I mean, I love your passion for training. I can, you just keep improving. Not, and I'm not even surprised in the slightest bit of how much you're improving. And I mean, it's going to be, I cannot wait for race day. I wish I was going to be able to be there. What
I
is it?
know,
Is
I do
it, I
too.
think it's Galena, right? Is that what it was? I know it's
Yeah.
something.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So at Galena, we're all going to be on our phones and
Yeah.
updating. Luckily, Galena Sky, that race is a race that I have plenty of time to look on my phone.
Yeah.
Maybe like during our the banquet, we'll have to have a TV on with Kaleb updates.
Yeah. When is Galena the weekend it starts or the weekend it finishes? Do you remember?
It is
It's the
the
6th is
10th.
when it starts. Okay. Yeah, so I should hopefully I'll be done by then. Because it starts on Monday. I'm hoping to be done by Friday. But we'll see.
Okay. Yeah. How long is it? I never really thought about how that works.
I think that the cutoff is 120 hours, I believe. So I think that's what is that, 5 days, I think is the cutoff.
Okay. So 5 days to do 250 miles. So you have to do at least 50 miles a day.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not an easy 50 miles. Have you run on any of the course?
So I think some of it is the Black Canyon course.
Okay.
I think it's in reverse or portions of it, and that's kind of how I've chosen my races this year. So Crown King is kind of similar, I think, to some of that, some of the initial running, and then I'll be doing a training run out there, on the first 37 miles, actually, the first weekend of April. And then, yeah, so then some of it's that Black Canyon course. I think there are parts of the Whiskey Basin course, and then I have gone up to Flagstaff a few times and have done Eldon, which is kind of like that wall right before the finish. So you climb up Eldon, which is about a 2,000 foot climb or so. And then you have to go down it to get into Flagstaff to finish. So I think that's around like mile 240, somewhere in that range. So, you have all of this running and days of running, and then you have to climb a mountain. So I've tried to prepare for that as much as I can as well. And I'm big on like going out onto trails and trying to have positive moments there so that when I'm in a negative headspace later on, which I know I will be at this point on the trail, I can look at something, whether it's like a landmark or whatever, and I can associate that with some really positive experiences that I've had there before. And so I've tried to do some of that on Eldon because I know that that's going to be a difficult phase for me. Um, so yeah, so I'm trying to build as much course familiarity as I can, but I obviously won't. I'll probably only get like 25 to 40% of the course ran before the race, or at least similar trails to what that'll look like.
Yeah. Well, I think
Yeah.
you're ready. I know you have to get to work, that we're right in the middle
Yeah.
of your work day. And we should probably get together after Mesquite Canyon and
Yeah,
hear
that'd be
about
great.
that race. That would be nice.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll have a race before then that I could talk about, but I want to hear
Yeah.
about that. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm excited for the year. And yeah, thanks for sharing and coming on. And I'm excited that we
Yeah.
get to do multiple races together. I'll be at Javelina. I'm doing the 100k at Javelina this year.
Heck
And I'm
yeah.
hoping, I think I'll be, I mean, hope, I don't like to say the word, I plan to be well trained. I want to be able to
Yeah.
run it the best that I can run. Um, I've, like I feel like I have the regular, like I can do my training runs. I have all that nailed down really well. I think that one of my weaknesses has been working on strength. And I did start working with a personal trainer twice a week. And then once a week, they're giving me homework to do. So I'm hoping with that, or hoping's not the right word, I said, but with that, my plan
Yeah.
is to be able to go there. But it's the first time I've done the 100k for quite a long time. I've done the 100k there before. I've done the race. I really should look at ultra sign up 3 or 4 times, the 100 and the 100k. And so, but it's been quite a few years. I've been doing the jackass, what is it, 32k with my kids the last
Yeah.
couple years. And so I'm really excited to get out there in the heat of the desert and
Yeah.
on a very runnable, that's a very, very runnable course. Like,
Yeah.
um, and I know we talked about how difficult it was. If anybody's still listening to us, and I don't want to scare anybody away, you can
Mhm.
do these races. I struggle on it a lot, but I did it, and I am so grateful that I did. So I hope that people, give it a try to do, you know, any of these trail races anywhere in the U.S.
Yeah, and like you just touched on it, like the time in the gym, like even if you're not from, and I think, I put on my coaching hat right now. Like I've got athletes that are in places that don't simulate Arizona trails, but I've got one that lives in Houston and is coming to Arizona to run a race, and I've got, others that are going to different types of terrain that they're going to be running a race on that they're not going to be familiar with. There's a lot of ways that you can simulate some of that stuff in the gym, and you can work on some foot speed. Like I'm really big on how do you get better foot speed, not just to be like a faster runner. Cause look, we're not all going to be like, we're not all going to be running like 7 minute miles or something like during a 100 miler, right? No matter what the condition of the trail is, but how do you get the foot speed so that if you do trip on a rock, you can catch yourself quickly, right? Or the balance to be able to, if your foot kind of gets caught behind you because you tripped on something and you have to hop on one foot for a couple of steps to be able to catch yourself, like how do you prepare your body to be able to do those things? And you don't have to be like on a crazy technical trail to do that, right? Whether you're running out on the West Coast or if you're running in the Midwest and you have a lot of roots and stuff like that that you're are potential tripping hazards, like there's ways that you can get your body ready. Even if you have to run a majority of your training miles on roads, you can still get your body ready in the gym or doing different types of drill work, which will really help you too. So like if you are in that boat where you are a little bit nervous about, oh, I don't know, because of the trail conditions or whatnot, like don't be, just find ways to kind of get your body used to it, whether that's working with a coach or looking up things online, like whatever that may be, like you can prepare for it. And you don't have to have the luxury of running the same trails all the time to be able to be ready for a race like that.
Yeah, and and I ran it pretty slow, and I had plenty of time, well under
Yeah.
cutoff.
Hmm.
Like, and I learned. I mean, I could tell that, like, you learn on the course, and now I know how to come back and get ready. I love
Yeah.
your tips though, because my trainer just asked me, "What else do you need help with?" And now I can tell him those tips and so he can
Yeah.
help me get ready.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't know. I just need to get stronger because I don't work on strength work. So, but I'm gonna have to tell him on foot speed. I need to work. I kind of knew
Hmm.
that I needed to do that, but I didn't really think about doing that in the gym. I thought about doing that more on the trails, but I think that's a really good
Yeah.
idea to do that in the gym.
Yeah, foot speed. And then also like, I trip all the time during races and you have to catch yourself. And a lot of times you catch yourself with your core, right? So
Yeah.
like you get your head out over your feet Well, what's holding all that together? It's your core. So to being able to do some core work, right? Doing a lot of ab stuff so that your body is, hey, if you do trip, if your foot speed is off, you do trip, you're struggling to catch yourself, like how do you engage your core to be able to pull yourself back up is another like important thing for running trails that are gonna, grab your ankle and try to pull you down. How do you fight that off?
Yeah. So, well, thank you. What is
Yeah.
your Instagram? So if anybody is listening, you definitely want to follow Kaleb and me on Instagram.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah.
So
And
Caleb's got
OMR.
some really and Ornery Mule Racing, yes. So yeah, we got
Yeah.
Ornery Mule Racing. I am Michele Hartwig runs, and
And
what are
mine is Caleb's underscore adventures.
yeah. So yeah, we post. We're pretty consistent posters on all the
Yeah.
platforms. So
Yeah. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, we got to bring some laughs to it. It can't always all be serious.
yeah, yours is always very funny. I'm like, I go, I can't be funny. Mine are more inspirational, pretty like
Yeah.
I'm just authentic to me. I'm just me. Like what I don't even know what
Yeah.
I'm gonna do. I just kind of video while I'm out on the run, and then I look at the video, and then it just kind of tells me what I want it to
Right.
do as a reel. And
Yeah.
but you had the one that hit 1 million. That was so
Yeah.
funny. Oh my gosh. That one we should play. My husband goes, he saw it. I was watching it and I'm like, oh my gosh, this hit 1 million. He goes, I saw that video. That was hilarious. I go, that's
That's
Kaleb.
funny.
He didn't even know it was you, and it came up in his feed.
I was with a friend the other weekend and we were in Flagstaff and he was just scrolling on his phone and we're not connected in any way on social media. And it popped up on his randomly and he's like, dude, and he like showed me it and I was like, this is crazy. Yeah,
And then
yeah,
also you were saying, because you're at work, this is your office that you're
hmm
in. You were
yeah.
saying that somebody came in your office one day and was like, "Hey, I saw them on Instagram."
No, I was at REI. I was in an REI and the
Okay.
guy checking me out was like, "Hey, you're an ultra runner, right?" And I had like running stuff on, so I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, I follow you on Instagram and I love your videos." And I was like, "This is crazy." Yeah. Yeah,
It's kind of a small world, and
it is.
we're all different kinds of runners, and we can all like. I would highly love it if we could. We like you said it earlier. I learn best by the mistakes that I make, but man, if we could just help people not make some of the mistakes, so that they could move around along faster by sharing
Yeah.
our mistakes with people, so that they can do better.
Yeah, and we live in a world right now where there's so much access to information. So whether it's, these podcasts, the coaching ones that OMR has, videos on YouTube, there's blogs everywhere, there's social media. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff. I would just say you've got to be careful what you follow because there's going to be people that think one way and others that think another way. And if you get too caught up in it, it's going to be very confusing, right? So
Yeah.
find sources that you trust and find things that are legitimate. And one of the things that there's a lot of like running influencers and people like that. And I think to me, there's like a difference between somebody that like posts about it and does versus somebody that does it and posts about it or like provides it that has a background and actually like performing in those, right? So it's not just like, here's how you run, but it's like they have a background in it, which is everything that the OMR stuff has, right? So that's what I would caution people to is like find folks that don't just talk about it, but back it up too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great advice. Definitely. That was what I mean, honestly, ordinary meal coaching came
Mhm.
from like when I first started ultra running, there wasn't even Facebook. So there was no
Yeah.
running clubs around and there was no place for me to learn. I literally ran Javelina 100 eating only peppermints because I didn't even know you were supposed to eat. They had food, they had plenty of food, but I
Yeah.
had only been eating those soft peppermints, so that I stuck with
Wow.
that. And that's what I ran, but I had nobody to talk to. And
Yeah.
I remember, and then I hired a coach, and oh my gosh, and even she said, well, there's not a lot of research out there on ultra, so I'm going to be kind of learning from you. And we learned some lessons, but it made a huge difference. Like I literally would PR any race I came up to because I had some structure in coaching
Hmm.
and knowing how to run. Where before that, I think I just went out and ran everything as fast as I could and as long as I
Yeah.
could all the time. And I always sort of hurt, and I just got
Yeah.
used to sort of hurting, and it helped so much. So it was really important to me to add coaching into ordinary meal racing and get we work hard to try to make sure we have the most qualified coaches out there that have good education and um, help anybody that dreams of doing one of these adventures, be able to get to the finish line. Anybody can do it. I
Yep.
can do it, and
Yeah.
and anybody.
Yeah, if you're willing to put in the work, like you can do it. That's the thing. Like that's what it comes down to. So just and I always when I talk to athletes, it's like I would rather you show up 100% of the time and give 70% effort than show up 70% of the time and give 100%. Because the more consistent you are, the better you're going to be. And I think if you can show up every week, even on the tough weeks, like you can definitely do these races. You can do 100 milers, you can do 50Ks, like whatever it is, it's your goal. You can do it. You just have to put in the work.
I mean, we need a freaking t-shirt that says that. That is so good. I need to write that on my wall on the days
Yeah.
that I'm like, it is too cold out, I'm not going.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That is, yeah, we should stop now, man. Drop the
Yeah.
mic.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
really good. Yeah, so yeah, we'll get back after Mesquite, and yeah, thanks.
Awesome.
Good luck.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle. Bye,
Okay, thanks
everybody.
everyone. Bye.